Trapped in a cone of silence. That's right, magic revealed. Hello, hi, welcome. How's cyberspace going for everybody else out there?
It's pretty crisp. It's pretty clear. We're clearly not having any technical difficulties or anything.
No, this is the internet. There's no problems on the internet. That's what they say. That's the place where everything, just goes really perfectly. How's everybody doing? Enjoying their August?
Well, I'm a little stressed. We had to get things going a little last minute again, but I managed to load myself onto a Game Boy cartridge, onto this Game Boy here. I downloaded myself off of ROM Hustler, I think, and don't worry, it's all legal. I own the original James Edward Smith, so it's perfectly within my rights to have a digital backup.
Yeah, that checks out.
And anybody else who's ever owned me before too can have a digital backup. And if you look at Twitter, that's a lot of people.
It's a whole other business out there. I'm a little worried about how you keep transitioning from digital medium to digital medium. Aren't you worried that you are going to lose some bits along the way or something?
I don't know. I think I look pretty high fidelity right now.
I mean, the Game Boy was known for its highest of fidelities. That's a fact.
It's true.
Do you have any other tricks in there that you could do? Now that you're a Game Boy?
Well, I got my startup screen.
I need to see this. Oh,
it's pretty
my
good,
gosh.
I think. I don't know, it's pretty nice. Maybe the copyright is still kind of pending on that. I don't know if Nintendo's going to come after us for that. And I've got this aftermarket backlight, which is pretty cool, So It looks like one of those Japanese Game Boy lights that they had, It's not too bad. My problem is it kind of runs down the battery.
This is the new U, though, right?
Well, as soon as I can find an AC adapter, I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
cut out a little bit.
They should be around, though, right? I suppose you need a certain jack and everything for the Game Boy. I don't even remember what kind of jack that they had.
Derek.
James?
I don't have enough power for this. Let's just start the show.
Okay, I think James is lost on the Game Boy. We should probably just, do the thing here. Somebody, please. Press the button.
You dare defy me? You will die.
Guess again, Iron Knuckle.
He's dead. Let's get out of here.
This is a test. This station is conducting a test of the emergency broadcasting system. This is only a test.
You dare defy me? You will die.
Guess again.
There we go. Don't mind me.
Are we live?
We're live.
Is this show actually happening?
We have sound.
I think.
Is the sound doubled or is it okay?
We're gonna wait for the.
We live. We live. Apparently, says the chat, and the chat can hear us. Welcome. Finally, we made it. It's August. It wouldn't be rectangles without everything exploding as right before we go live. That's basically how things work here. But that's fun. It keeps James on his toes and allows him to do twice the work tonight, which is fine with me.
Hooray.
How's everybody doing?
The only thing not exploding right now is the barbecue that we usually have on the August month. Normally we're taking this month off. We usually take August off. At least in Ottawa, we would have the barbecue at Vincent Massey Park. We haven't had a chance to do an August event in Toronto yet.
We had some grand ideas. A big party full of crowds, people breathing on each other.
Yeah. It was going to be great.
The old world, you know.
Yeah, making out, all that good stuff.
Yeah, a kissing booth.
Yeah, we haven't had an August in Toronto ever. It's never happened in Toronto.
This is technically our first August in Toronto.
So we'll get there. Hopefully next year.
Someday.
But instead tonight we're doing business as usual. We're Dirty Rectangles Online. We got a lot of stuff to show.
Hell yeah. Maybe we should get to some announcements before we get into our fine presenters of the evening. Who's got the first one?
Sure. So there is the DMG October social. That is sorry, I have to bring up the link.
We'll drop it in the chat.
October 10th. And I think there's some other DMG events too. Like DMG is still doing virtual events. I've been to a few of them. They're all lovely. Go to dmg.toronto to take a look at what they're doing.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
And we couldn't really think of too many other announcements of things going on. There's also, if you are a Toronto game developer, you should check out the Hand Eyes Twitter right now. They have a meeting going on this weekend about working or figuring out some new board members over there. So if you're a Toronto person, that's probably something you should be invested into, and go take a look at them because they are fine people. Did we have any other announcements? I think that was kind of it.
I think
there's
that was
also
it too.
Night of the Indigenous Devs, which
is
October 23rd. And we will post the link in the chat for more information. So if you're interested in seeing games by Indigenous devs, or you are an Indigenous dev, then definitely take a look at that. Check that out for sure.
Yeah. And I would like to remind people, of course, to check out our website and take a look at the Code of Conduct and make sure that you are familiar with such a thing. The Code of Conduct outlines how we expect you to conduct yourself during these events, whether live or via the internet. Basically, if you think about doing harassment, don't. It's not good, and we don't like it. And we will not hesitate to remove you. Also,
there are mods here.
Yes, there are mods.
Yeah, no racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia. You know the drill. Don't do any of that stuff.
Yeah, we're not down with that. So check yourself.
And to maybe call it out real quick, we also have an anonymous sort of feedback form on our website as well if you ever experience something, or if you just want to give us a bit of feedback, whether anonymously, or you can feel free to put your email on it and we'll get back to you. But that is another sort of avenue that's out there. Cool. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Eric. We have 5 people presenting tonight. It's going to be pretty killer. I think that's it for the announcements, so maybe we'll just sort of roll into this. What do you guys say?
Excellent.
This is where we motion to James to awkwardly transition this.
It's going to be great.
I'm going to jump over
to
a scene labeled BRB. I'm going to hope that this is an appropriate scene to jump to. Alright, here we go.
He agrees.
Everyone can hear me? We're all good? Okay. So, hi, my name's Damian Summer, and I'm going to be talking about my absolute favorite video game ever, which I happen to be working on. It's called Bravery Network Online. You might have seen this splash art in places. It's kind of ended up in places that we didn't expect. So this is kind of like I'm giving the intro story to like how we even got to this point. So what happened was what? Oh no, it's working. Never mind. We're all good. So the intro to this is I fell in love with a game called Smogon, and Smogon is a like modification to the rules of Pokemon to allow for more competitive like online play, like specifically singles online play, because this is how you play Pokemon for like for those not familiar, this is how you play Pokemon for like 20 hours to 40 hours or whatever amount of time it takes you to beat this game, right? It's 1v1. You have like a team, but it's only one out at a time, and you're like knocking each other out. The problem with that is like when Nintendo is balancing for competitive, or I guess Game Freak is balancing for competitive, they're balancing around 2v2, which is like in most games, like you fight 2v2 like once, twice, maybe 5 times in the entirety of the game, right? So the fact that competitive has like a completely different set of gameplay like really frustrated me. So I wanted to like kind of sink my teeth into like something that was meatier, and so Smogon is a whole community dedicated to that. They house rule all of Pokemon, and they essentially reduce its design to make it more interesting, which is super fascinating to me. And the closest example is that I can think of is Melee, right? Or like Smash Bros in general, but like Melee specifically, they just pull away most of the mechanics in the game to make it something that's compelling. Like you can see, like their stage list is basically, it's ridiculous how few stages they use. But it all makes sense, right? From a competitive standpoint, people crave that. So another thing that was bugging me about Pokemon was this. Anybody who knows anything about Pokemon knows that it's like breeding is a nightmare of like hidden rules. I like to say that it's like imagine if you were playing Magic and you bought a pack of Magic cards, but because you weren't wearing a yellow hat and you didn't roll a die before you you didn't roll a natural 20 before you bought that pack, and then you also didn't say like 3 different secret passwords that are completely unrelated to each other, then your cards are just bad. Like they don't compete with anybody else's. That is kind of how it works in Pokemon. Like, and there's no mechanic in the game, at least like on the general level, that tells you that like you're not going to be able to compete with the things that you're like putting your effort into, right? And then the type chart is like a whole thing. It's just a mess, and like it makes sense to people who've played Pokemon for years, but like just look at this thing. Like to a newbie, this is a nightmare, right? And so like having all of these like different thoughts in my head, I like started thinking about like what would I do with Pokemon differently. But first I want to like circle back to Smogon, because what they did was they made like simulators, and this is the latest simulator in a long line of like there was like way older, more shoddier versions of simulators in the game, or in like Pokemon takes. And this is the Pokemon Showdown is now like the premier simulator, and like everyone battles on there, and it makes it super easy to get into, because all you have to do is like, I want a level 100 Scizor. I like max out like all of my stats in this one thing, you know, and like I get this item that is like exclusive to an event in Japan that happened like once for 1 week, but like I can theoretically have it, so I just give it to myself. And like that is the rule set that they operate under, but they operate under an even more interesting rule set, because they do this thing where they vote on like what they want the meta to be like, and you have to like qualify by ranking up high enough. You have to basically start a fresh account and hit a certain level of like competency before you get a vote, and then once you get the vote, you can vote for whatever you want. And like, so this Pokemon that's illustrated here just got banned. And so like looking at like how like they're like this community is like shaping the meta is like super fascinating to me, and like pulled me right in. And then when it came time for me to make a new game, like I was like after the Yogg, after Chesh, which are my 2 prior games, I got super inspired specifically by this part of Smogon. And this part of Smogon is they take that like democratic like design, like it's a community, like a democratic community design, which I don't like. Please tell me if there's other things like this, because I find it fascinating, but I don't know anything else that works this way, right? They take this process and they apply it to like making new Pokemon that they can then put in their metagame that they've basically made for themselves, right? And so and there's a lot of like fake Pokemon on the internet, but the thing that's super interesting about these ones is they're in the bubble. Like this is a sub forum in this super competitive community, right? So all of these Pokemon are being designed like as interesting, different, like new, like occupying new niches in like this meta that they've created, and it like all super inspiring. They even like made a fighting game about it, like about the Pokemon that they made, which is like wild, and it's like really good. Like for what it is, it's fantastic. So it came time, and I was like, okay, I want to take a stab at this thing, you know? Like, no, I'm not seeing anybody else take Pokemon from this angle. Everyone else is doing, like, some kind of monster collection thing. They're focusing on the collection part first and foremost. I want to focus on, like, this part, like, this gritty, like, focus on all these mechanics, you know? And then we could soften it up and make it maybe more accessible for people so that they don't have to learn secret esoteric things, right? And so I made this document here. Like I basically just made a giant spreadsheet, started putting some numbers down, and I showed it to a couple friends, and specifically Draken and from Smiling, also known as like Min Taylor Baywu. And a week later, Min comes back to me and she's like, "Hey, I made a prototype of the thing you showed me." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, "Are we doing this?" And she's like, "Yeah, we're doing this." And I'm like, oh shit, okay, this game is going to be bigger than anything we've ever touched before. And it was, and it still is, because this was 2015. It is 2020. I am still working on this game. Holy shit. Okay, so then I made a paper prototype. This is from oh man, I meant to put a little citation. The art is not used with permission, but it's by a really good artist on DeviantArt, like that I just use this placeholder art, but like this is a print and play we made so we could test some mechanics really quickly, right? Because it's really easy to iterate in print and play. And then I'm being shown something, I'm not sure. Okay, anyway, so then we got an artist named Kelly Kwong. She joined the project, and then we just started going for it, right? So this is still 2015. Like we're just like adding stuff, and making it. And I'll explain what we did in a bit. But like right now, like it's just like going through like the process of making this thing, and like we instead of monsters, we made them people, and we removed the type chart, and I'll get into that. And like we've been slowly progressing. This is like a trailer we showed at E3, and it's been a journey. This is 2018 now, I'm pretty sure. This is like later 2018, and like you'll see the game in a minute, and it's come a long way. And so yeah, I've actually been running the game in the background the whole time, and now I'm open to like discussion and stuff. I just wanted to get us there, you know. Because it's been a journey and it's still going. But this is Bravery Network Online. It is a turn-based battle RPG in the style of Pokemon. And it's got a bunch of stuff in it, and we're still working on it. So one thing is you can go in and you can customize your characters. Also, I welcome commentary now. Like you guys can unmute if you want to speak your minds or whatever.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
It's hard to hold back.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, no, feel free. And if there's any questions in the chat or whatever. But yeah, so this is like our team builder. So and again, work in progress. We're still working on this. But like you can go in, you can like edit your dudes, and like there's like a whole unlock mechanic, but like it's super transparent, and everyone can kind of get what they need to do in order to actually get the thing instead of like using some obscure mechanic that isn't explained anywhere in game, right? So like you could change their stats, you can like tweak all of this if you want, like, and there's no barrier to that, because like these are people and you're basically just telling them what do you want to focus on, right? Like, hey, maybe you should focus on this kind of defense, and like that's the theming for all of this, right? It takes place in like, we didn't want to just do the creature thing, so it takes place in like a post-apocalyptic universe where like everything is like super busted and broken, and you could see like this is actually the CN Tower down here. Oh wait, no, I'm blocking. No, am I blocking it? No, I'm not. Okay, yeah. And so just to give a scale of like how big this building is, but like everyone's isolated in towers, and it's just like trying to make do. And so they invented this sport called bravery. This is just like this is our like Gary Oak of the game. You could just go in and challenge him. Yeah, like I don't know. I'll explain some of the mechanics. So like one big problem, and the stream's gonna get really choppy. I'm sorry. That's just because my computer can't handle running this game and streaming at the same time. It's my computer's fault. It's not the game's fault. It is completely my computer. But yeah, so one thing we removed was randomness. There is no missing, because I've played a lot of competitive Pokemon, and that means I've been in a lot of matches where I've like sat there and I'm like, hey, I have like a 20% chance to win here. Like if I hit my like 20% chance, I win. And if they hit their 80% chance, they win. And then I just rolled the dice well and I won. And it felt super unsatisfying, right? Like that just happens in Pokemon. That is just like inherent to its design. And so that's completely gone. Instead, we replaced it with this charge bar on the left. And what the charge bar does is it like you slowly build it up over time by like hitting and like getting hit and stuff. And then you could cash it out basically on, you can either spend it to like get a flourish, which is kind of like a critical hit, or you could spend it on a parry, which is kind of like making your opponent's move miss. And there's a lot of balance and design that goes behind it. There's a lot of interplay to all these mechanics. The computer's just copying me, I guess. But like, yeah, like a big thing is like switching. So the type chart's gone. The big thing with the type chart being gone is instead we added, so in a lot of RPGs there's like a physical, and then there's a magical attack and defense, and then a physical attack and defense. We also added an emotional attack and defense and removed the type chart. So now everyone just kind of has 3 axes you can get hit and hit people from, right?
Right.
So for instance, this character is purely physical. So she can't do but she hits really hard physically. So like we're just gonna start wailing on our opponent here. You'll notice our teams are mirrored. That's just because that's just our like debug setting is like it automatically mirrors teams. Like I can switch into her, and it's like this. It's a deceptively like robust like competitive RPG because like we went for these like super stylized graphics. And so a lot of people have come into it not expecting that. And so we've actually accommodated for that. And like we've got like a bunch of like single player story content as well to like kind of just like be like, hey, you could also just like explore this world, you know? And it's actually kind of mixed in with the multiplayer stuff. So it kind of leads you in both directions, and like we're super happy with that. Anyway, I know time's coming up, so like feel free to say things.
There's a good question in the chat here from Tibbsy Pop, which is basically what made you decide to go with humans instead of monsters.
We just wanted to do something different. Like it's if you could see like little knight people, like they started as little knights and then it just went from there. Almost every other game that like pulls from Pokemon's mechanics pulls the monster part as well, and we didn't feel like we had to be constrained by that, so we didn't. Like a lot of the changes we made in this game are purely because we were like, let's change it and see what happens. And if we don't like it, we can always go back. And sometimes we would walk our changes back, but most of the time we're like, no, this is cool. Like, let's keep it. Let's run with it. You know, like there's no reason to be married to like the original, like that is not an undefeatable obelisk or whatever, right? Like that is something you can topple. if you want to.
So, like, how long do you run with something then? Like, if you're like, this is a cool idea, let's run with it.
I mean, we're making this 5 years, but like, I don't know. At this point, a lot of the stuff is cemented, but even now, I'm still like tweaking like how things work. Like, there's no like process. There's no like full process. I'm just gonna take her out. Yeah. So like, I really like the emotional attacks in this game. That attack right up deals extra damage if your opponent has feelings, which is like a status effect. And so there's a lot of like tongue-in-cheek jabs. Like there's the whole like the class that gets right up like is like a business class that is like based on like the super smarmy like 80s business trope of like, yeah, just like always got to succeed, like chug that coffee, let's go.
Glad to more us.
Yeah, like the American Psycho-esque stuff. Like we went. This is like absolutely a pastiche of like just a mishmash of everything. You'll see like here, this attack is like a bakken, like a Japanese like the sword martial art. But there's also like long swords and claymores and like boxing mixed in with all of that, as well as like digital magic that comes in, and like you're shooting like energy beams out of your hands and stuff. It's very messy, and like intentionally so. Like we wanted to make like a kind of unique, weird feeling future that didn't feel like anything else. It actually started as like a utopia, and as I was writing it, I was like, there is no way I can walk away calling this a utopia. It is a nightmare of a scenario to be stuck in. It's like, yeah. So, but like, I don't know. This is just me rambling about this game that I love.
It's super cool. There's another good question here too from Wasig. So, what amount of influence do you want your player base to have over the meta, considering Smogon was such an influence?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot, and I honestly still don't know. That's something I kind of want to play by ear, but we do have analytics in the game to like kind of be able to see, okay, this is being used a lot. Like, how can we make this interesting for people in a different way? We've been talking about potentially like the updates having like a narrative beat to them. So like if somebody we have to like nerf somebody, for instance, we'll like put a story reason behind it and like make a small little scene to like give them the justification of like why they're suddenly weaker. It's super.
That's really cool.
Yeah, we've got a lot of wacky ideas that have come up over the years, but like, yeah, the Smogon influence is huge, but like, I don't know if the community is going to have the same level of like democratic impact, just because of like, this is a game from the ground up built for this, while the entire idea of Smogon is they're actually pulling away from a design to make it in a more interesting space, right? Which is equally, like, I think that's really cool, but I don't want to like try and duplicate that because I don't think it's possible. That's something that comes up organically, Yeah. That's this video game.
Yeah, we've got another question.
Yeah.
LD More asks, I'm struggling to ask the question I want to about PP/TP in competitive versus dungeon crawling, but how do you think about the amount of TP a move/character has access to?
Yes. Okay, that's something I meant to touch on. This character is an anomaly, but like most characters don't have a lot of uses of their moves, and that is like a conscious decision. Pokemon is like saddled by the fact that it is also an adventure RPG, so you need like resources that you dole out slowly over time. This is like basically how many times can you use a move before you have to like go and recover somewhere, essentially. In Bravery Network, each fight is like its own contained thing. Which means that we can get away with really small moves. Like, because in Pokemon, you can end up at like 200 plus turns, like if people's teams are configured a certain way. And that like takes like an hour, 2 hours to play out. And it's not fun. Like, nobody is having fun in that scenario, right?
Right.
And so we were like, no, like, I've never seen a battle in this game last longer than like 40 turns, 45 turns, you know? And that's because we like really limited the amount of uses you can have. And like that also is a way to like restrict design. So like we have nobody has it on this team, but like we have like a move that like puts up like a barrier that your opponent has to hit before they can get past. You can only use that once. So you're using your move slot like entirely for that. And so we're definitely using that as a balancing mechanic, and it's really fun to play around with that space. Like we've got a lot of vectors for balancing, and it's I don't know, this game has been a joy to develop as well as a nightmare, as you can imagine, developing something for 5 years. But yeah. I know I'm at like 20 minutes now, so I'm good to cede my seat at this point.
Oh, it's totally cool. So where do we send people to check it out?
Right. So you can go to bravery.network if you want to go to the website. We have a Discord, which is discord.gg/bravery. We have a Twitter, and we have a mailing list on our website. Like all of that stuff. We currently have a sign up for like early access demos. Because we're going to be doing a public demo like at the end of the month, basically. But if you want a sneak peek early on, if you sign up for that, you'll probably get in. We'll because we need to do like server stress testing and stuff, because this is running on our own dedicated servers. So got to be careful about that. Yeah.
This is cool.
Excellent.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me show this.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming out and talking about this. This is super amazing.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. This is where we do a slow transition. Over to you, James.
Thanks, Damien.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks
for having me.
Doritos in the chat for Damien.
Yes, Doritos in the chat.
You dared?
Alright, well, our next presenter, if you've come out to any of our live Dirty Rectangles events, if you remember what those are like, being there in the flesh at the Seascape, then you're probably familiar with Gregory Campbell. He always comes out to our live ones, he always comes out to our online ones, and he's someone who is just always up to trying to make a new game, trying to experiment with different things, and so yeah, he's going to present a few different game projects that he's working on for you right now.
All right, thanks, James. As James mentioned, I showed off Magical Jumping Bean, I believe, on the February showing of the Toronto show.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, thanks. The games that I'm showing off don't have any camera controls, so we won't have any mess ups for the people that were there for that. Which is funny. But anyways, I got a whole mishmash of games that I want to show off. I have 2 Game Jam games that I'm going to quickly fly through, and then a bigger one. So right now here we have Palish, or Polish. It's how it's meant to be. The phonics spelling of it. So afraid if I called it Polish or the Polish game, people might think it's Polish, which is definitely not what it's about. There's a submission for the ICDBWTMAG, the I Can't Draw But Want to Make a Game, which is right in my wheelhouse because I really like just mashing cobbled together MS Paint looking stuff and just going for it. And this whole game is essentially just about polishing items as quickly as you can. I had an idea and I was like, my games need more polish. What if I just make a game that's all about polishing? Also, quick side note, there are a few Magic Jumping Bean Easter eggs throughout the night, or throughout this presentation, so if you see any, throw some beans in the chat. That's even possible. But yeah, that's literally it.
This font that you have on the side for
yeah, this game jam was actually 2 weeks long, but I figured I'd just use it just to understand the scope of game jams, because I'd never really been in one before. Yeah, that's literally it. I also thought it'd be really funny, because initially I was like, this game could be super polished, but then this game jam came along and I was like, or it can be the exact opposite of that. Which is exactly what I went for. Oh, beans in chat. Beans in chat. Yeah, that's basically it. You just spray stuff down and then you wipe it down. On to the next game. So this one was for the GMTK Game Jam. The theme for it was Out of Control. So I thought, what would be more fun than a top-down shooter where you can't control where you aim? Also, this main music is a bop that I found online. Really dig it. So yeah, might be a little loud. But yeah, you literally just click, but where you click is not necessarily where the beam gonna be where it always is. So you just essentially try to run away. It's more survival than anything because you really can't rely on your gun. So yeah, there's also voting with this game jam, and a lot of people really didn't like the idea that you couldn't see where the bullet was going to go ahead of time, but I'm just going to chalk that up to artistic integrity and say that they're wrong. So yeah, that's it. Hold on. I'm going to put this down a tiny bit.
Like the random
you ask something? Yeah, the crates are great. Yeah, that's basically it. You just shoot, just run and shoot.
What were you using to do these game jams? These are all in Unity, right?
Yeah, these are all in Unity. I've been a Unity boy since I've really started trying to get into it, and also just been doing this as like game development as a part-time kind of thing. That's a rail gun. That's what I call that.
Are there any like frameworks or anything like that, or like little things from the asset store that you've been using to kind of do stuff more quickly, or
No, I've strictly been using Unity. I try to make stuff myself, like from the ground up, which has made a lot of stuff very tedious and probably way more painful than it actually has to be, especially considering that I'm too stubborn to try and learn stuff ahead of time. So yeah, that's caused quite a bit of problems.
Learn by doing.
Sorry?
Learn by doing.
Yeah, exactly. Learn by doing.
It's always better to do
like
it the hard way.
Oh, go ahead. I feel like the program you need like a baseline of stubbornness just to get through it.
Yeah, I was just saying, it's always better to learn to do it the hard way and then realize later how dumb you were when you start doing it the easier way.
Yeah, exactly. It's more like you learn how to do it the hard way, and then you realize, nah, someone else probably wrote this much better than I did. I'm just gonna use their tool or something.
Yeah. The only issue for that for me was for that last one. That was a 48-hour game jam, which shout out to everybody who contributed to the GMT game jam. I don't know how you guys do game jams frequently because that took all the energy out of me.
Oh yeah, they're very draining. I love doing game jams, but like I'm always so tired by the end, and I can't do like too many in a row.
It gets harder the older you get. Game jam is a 20-somethings game.
All right, so this is the big show for my presentation is Super Robo Squad. I just want everybody to listen in quickly to the intro.
Super Robo Squad.
Shout out to my brother for doing all the audio for most of my games and also adding that in because I love that. And there's a few other ones like that.
Yeah.
Perfect. So when you normally boot this up, endless mode and challenge mode aren't available, and this is a game I'm currently in progress with. But I've obviously tested it a few times, so they're available. But we're just going to pretend like they're not and go through tutorial mode. So I had this idea. I was working on Magic Jumping Bean, and the main thing that kept sticking in my head was, imagine you have a big old angry robot, as you can clearly see in front of you, and you're fighting him off, and you've got a few robots in your party, and let's say he has a wooden chest plate, and you have a fire robot, then you could use fire, and then that whole wooden chest plate would essentially disappear and show a bunch of circuitry. And then you would use a lightning robot, and then you use a water robot to get that circuitry all wet, and then a lightning robot to do like a super critical hit for massive damage type thing. So that whole idea of the sort of combat puzzle has just been sticking in my head for a while, so I figured I'll try and make it as like a bit of a prototype, see if it's even fun. I'm sure it'll be fun making, but in terms of it actually being fun in the end result, I was also curious of seeing that. So this is what it's come down to. So the tutorial, just to start off, just to show that there's normal turn-based combat that you can win through. But for the weak point, which I'll get into, is kind of like the board game Mastermind, if anybody's played that. And you'll come to notice that some of the colors have certain weaknesses and strengths depending on what it's attacking. And also, this is going to come in later, but I want some audience participation later. I want you guys to tell me what order I should attack in. So, for example, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, but if you wanted to do the opposite in chat, right, like 4, 3, 2, 1, if you want to do it like that, or 4, 3, 1, 2 kind of thing. Just keep that in mind for later. I'll be looking at the chat, or the Dirty Rectangle team wants to chime in, obviously, and then Victory. So this introduces, also there's Tutorial Bot in the corner, but I'll do her job for the time being. This incorporates the weak point. So you can see there's a green chest piece. If you hit that with a bunch of red guys, it's a weak point victory. And this fight is to get you to understand the how the strengths and weaknesses work. So a fight with the red guys before was working, but now that he has a red body piece, they're doing no damage. However, the green guy is doing a lot of damage. And then you'll, of course, fight with the green guy, kill him, and move on. And then this incorporates a new type of robot that I call ability robots that don't actually attack, but they give you some sort of ability or buff to help you out. So we'll just have him go last, so we can do quite a bit of damage here. And also to show that the enemy can also do the same abilities that you can do. So because there was a shield hit, it did no damage, but now he's going to throw up a shield. So I'll talk with this guy first, then this guy second, and just to quickly show something. Actually, no, hold on. I'm going to put the shield first and then have all these guys that, or no. Thinking too much. Okay. I'll go in this order. So get rid of this shield, throw out this shield, but because the shield's in the way, our guys don't do any more attack. So you gotta keep in mind that shields give and take kind of thing. So let's just get rid of this guy.
Victory!
And then these next two fights are going to be quite similar, but they're to incorporate the other abilities. So in this one, you have a robot that heals your party, but then you'll also see that the enemy robot can do the exact same thing, which can be a bit of a pain and will make the battle go on for a little longer than you want it to. So bear with me. Yeah, I see somebody in chat asking, so the big ones are enemies? Yeah, the big nasty looking guy in the front of the enemy. And then this should get rid of him.
Victory!
And next we have
He's already dead.
Yeah, they're robots, they're automated, they just keep going. It's definitely not any coding on my point, trying to learn how animations work. It's definitely not it. So this robot here, I like to call the buff bot, because he buffs the entire party and makes you do more damage. But of course, the enemy can do the same. However, it also shows here that if you're going to do 0 damage, it doesn't matter what buffing you're going to do. You're still going to do 0 damage.
Victory!
Yeah. Again, shout out to my bro. So yeah, this one might look similar to a previous battle we've had, and that's just to show that even if you do get the correct sequence for the weak points, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're done the fight. The weak points can vary in how long they are. So this one's more than 4 hits. Okay, here's where things get complicated. It's something I implemented and I was like, this might be too much, but I kept it in because why not? So you could see at the top left of the enemy's head, there's a 4 Roman numeral as opposed to a 1, which has been in all the other previous fights. This means that this robot is a model number 4, which means that the usual strengths and weaknesses that we're used to in the past fights are entirely different. And you gotta kind of figure out how that works. So in this, you try it out and be like, oh, maybe the reds will work on the weak point. No, that's not the case. They're just doing normal attacks. However, now the green works for the green weak points.
Smash them.
Yeah. Victory. Oh yeah, okay, so this is audience participation. Let's go. What order do you guys think I should go in? First one I see in chat.
Oh. 5.
There's no 5th option. That's okay. 4, 3, 2, 1. Alright, so we got one more. Oh. Another weak point hit. Oh, and
it's switched.
Yeah. Okay, 2, 4. 4. This should work. Hopefully this doesn't. Actually, wait. Let me just double check to see if this will work. Yeah, okay. because I don't want us dying and then not seeing the last battle, because that'll be a little anticlimactic. All right, so this last battle, throw some more sequences, because this is just to test that you've learned everything. And also, I don't know if you guys noticed here, but it seems like Tutorial Bot has to leave. They say, if you'll excuse me, I have to go see a particular magical legume show off their games at a particular game dev meetup. Not sure what that's all about. All right, I'm seeing a few 1, 2, 3, 4s, so we'll do that. That's a classic.
Oh, it's with the sun. Always end with the shield.
Yeah, always end with the shield. If I see anybody putting a 4 that isn't last in the chat, I'll be disappointed.
It'd be 2, 1, 3, 4.
2, 1, 3, 4.
I think so.
Oh, damn. Nice.
Yeah.
You broke the code. And I'm seeing. I'll just do 4th, because that's the end. That was the last one.
That's why you have to be careful showing games under rectangles. You might get your ass speed run after this.
Yeah. Alright, so I figured we could jump into endless mode and do like 2 or 3 fights, and then I'll take questions and call it there. So I see 1, 2, 3, 3, but that's not right.
1, 2, 4, 3.
1, 2, 4, 3. Right.
Oh.
I did no damage.
I just want to be his friend.
Any other suggestions? In chat or vocally.
Let's go 2.
Somebody said Buffbot goes first, so I'll do Buffbot first. Okay, 4, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, the buff first.
Guys, we might die here.
Oh.
This would be no. Okay, one more. One more.
Doing what we love.
Do one more and then we'll call it there.
Yeah.
Rip run.
I'll just do a random one. Hey.
Smash them. 1, 2, 4, 3.
Oh.
Yay.
Hey. All right.
Well, thank you, Greg.
That was amazing.
Yeah,
super cool.
Good stuff.
Thank you, Greg.
Did we cover all our questions?
Yeah, I think so, actually.
We have one in the chat. Ribby says, does it have to be all 4 bots every time?
It does not have to be all 4 bots at every time, however, it's highly recommended.
Got it.
Kind of what I hope people learn after the first round in the tutorial.
Alright, well, yeah, we'll do a quick break, and then we'll go over to...
Hold on, okay, I've got to quickly, let me stop streaming. Little Dirty Rectangles first, I believe. I'm going to pull a bit of an E3 here, but Super Robo Squad is available to play right now. Just released it. Just released it.
You heard it here.
If anybody wants to try it tonight or sometime this week, show me what high score you get on endless mode or challenge mode, assuming those high scores work properly. But yeah, boom.
Please.
I tricked you all.
Hoisted.
We were fooled. Ono fooled us, and now Gregory.
That was it.
Cool. Thanks so much, Gregory. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Some
thanks.
videos in the chat for Greg.
Yeah, thanks
we're
for
gonna
letting me
pop
show
up,
off
That everybody.
a
we're
good
gonna pop
handful of
up a little
games.
transition. We'll be back in a little bit. / just a minute.
Yeah.
Alright, well, next up we have Megan Byrne, who will be presenting something on Indigenous games. So here we are. Over to you, Megan.
Hi everyone. So this is my talk. Just what is an Indigenous video game? Here we go. Tansi, Megan Byrne Nasika-san, Apatwako Sisan, Hamilton, Ontario, Nugent. Hi, I'm Megan Byrne. I am a Apatwako Sisan, or federally known as the Ontario Métis. I am a game designer and owner of Atmos Games. And if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter at either Byrne_Megan, or you can follow my company at Achimo Games. So just before we get started, just want to bring out a couple terms I may reference, and just cool things to know. So two of the terms I usually use a lot when talking about my work is Indigenous futurisms and survivance. So Indigenous futurisms, if you're familiar with Afrofuturisms, you probably have a good idea what that's about. But essentially it's a movement which consists of different media and all expressing Indigenous perspectives of the future, but the Indigenous way of understanding, and I am using this as an umbrella term, but specifically within the Anishinaabe, Cree, and several of the Six Nations, the concept of time can be, you have your past future, your past present, your future present, and everything kind of in between. So the idea of time as being something that's very linear is kind of at odds with an indigenous way of looking at the world. And so we take this kind of idea of this, place of time and looking at the future, and we usually express it in things like science fiction or all the other subgenres. It's a term that's specifically coined by Anishinaabe Métis Professor Dr. Grace Dillon in her anthology Walking the Clouds, an anthology of Indigenous science fiction. Now, survivance is another term you may not have heard of, but it's essentially, its literal definition is an active sense of presence that continuates of native stories and not a mere reaction or survivable name. And what that essentially means is this idea that in addition to, being resilient and resilience, we should also look at something that goes beyond that. So in resilience, it's sort of you are staying the same in the face of adversity, whereas survivance is you are becoming better in the face of adversity. And this is a term that was coined by Anishinaabe scholar and writer Gerald Visner in Survivance Narratives of Native Presence. And I definitely recommend you check out both of those if you're interested in more of this stuff. So, what makes your game indigenous? This is a question I definitely heard a lot when I was starting out. I don't hear it so much now, and I think that's in part to the work of game designers like Elizabeth Leponce, who have really pushed this idea that we need to stop asking Indigenous people to perform a particular kind of indigeneity. And so, as being something that I got a lot when I was younger, it definitely put me on a spot. It's also not the same as asking the question, what nation are you from? Who on your team is Indigenous? These questions are still valid, still should be asked, even by non-Indigenous people, especially if you're looking at something that looks very visibly Indigenous. It's fine to ask the question of oh, which nation are you a part of? Who are you responsible to? So when I center myself, one of the things I usually point out the fact is that I don't have access to a very strong, nation in terms of I don't have that connection, not that the nation's not strong. And because I don't have that connection, usually what I have to be very careful in my work is saying that this is me, this is sort of my experience, this does not speak for other Indigenous people, this doesn't even necessarily speak for other Indigenous people within my own nation, which would be the Ontario Métis Nation. And even that is a big umbrella term that has lots of different groups under it. But I am responsible to my family, and they will call me out on it if I make mistakes or something like that. So I'm always responsible to someone, and that's part of why we as Indigenous creators are always asking, who on your team is Indigenous and what is their nation? Because essentially what we're asking is who are you, where are you from, and who are you responsible for? Who gets to call you out if you do something wrong is what we're asking. But this question, what makes your game Indigenous, this isn't really about, asking for nationhood or asking for responsibility. This is asking for performance. And one of the things that I point out in a lot of my talks when I talk about what is authentic in Indigenous is, what does that mean? What does authentically Indigenous even mean? When you think of something, just right now as a little exercise, just in your head, you don't have to say it out loud, but just what is it conjuring in your head when someone's oh, that's Native, or that's Indigenous, or that's First Nations, or that's Métis, or that's Inuit? In your head, you're probably going to have some images that pop up. And I guarantee you those images that pop up are very much grounded in that sort of, feathers and buckskin and powwow outfits and particular kinds of tattoos and using animal skins and being very close to the land and being very primitive. A lot of times that's the word that comes up. And when you start examining where do we get these images from, how do we understand them, and some people have pointed to things well, it's film and television, but it's more than that. Because up until this moment in time, and I would only say within the last decade or so, have Indigenous people been able to be their own curators. So everything up to this moment, I would say, with the exception of a few places, your idea of authentically Indigenous has been curated to you by a non-Indigenous person. Or if they are an Indigenous person, most likely they're not Indigenous to that community or that nation that they are curating. And so again, they just perpetuate these same ideas of what is Indigenous. And like I said here, even when Indigenous people are the curators, we're still sort of subject to this pre-developed mindset. It comes up in film studies, it comes up in, art curation. And of course, like, unless you're totally in charge and you are the final say-so, you're always going to have somebody else as the lens that you are working through. So if you are an Indigenous person working in, say, a gallery, you're probably working for a department of that gallery. You probably still have a boss who gets to have a final say. And usually a lot of Indigenous people find themselves fighting, and it's usually over this: what is authentically Indigenous? Yeah, it's Indigenous because I am Indigenous. And this is true of so many pieces, not just my own piece, but like so many other people, other Indigenous people's work. But not everything I make is Indigenous, and I'm sure you're super confused now, and that's totally okay, because we're going to dive into my work, and I'm going to kind of talk about my thoughts and feelings on what I think is Indigenous versus what I think is not Indigenous of my own work. So, when I call something Indigenous that I am working on, then it's Indigenous. If I'm working on something and I don't call it Indigenous, then that's up for interpretation, but it's not up for somebody to sort of take my indigeneity and then slap it on that project and say it's okay. So if I worked on a project and there were elements of indigeneity in it, I may not have signed off on that. I may not have been okay with it. Usually I'm very vocal if I'm not okay with it and it happened anyways. But again, we're going back to like, this is sort of, it's my word that I'm calling something Indigenous versus not Indigenous. Now, what would I call an Indigenous piece? Well, that would start with my very first solo project, which was called Wanisinowin Lost. And this piece is a very personal piece that I did in 2015, which was me exploring through game mechanics just what is it to be Indigenous away from community? What is it to be Indigenous when you find out when you're like 10? What is it to be Indigenous and not feel like you're authentic? And these were questions that were asked of me, like a child, which is like just unfair. And also, these are things I asked myself. And it took a really long time, like personally, outside of this game, it took me a really long time to kind of come to terms with being white passing and Indigenous and feeling sometimes like, well, I don't belong here. I know this isn't unique. This has been described as the Métis experience, but a lot of Indigenous people go through it. It's an uncomfortable burden to bear. It's not insurmountable, though. And I think it's something that takes a lot of time and work and slowness. One of the things that I talk about now when I think about this whole idea of reconnecting with community that has been lost through the colonial projects of Canada and the United States, I think of the term stitching muscle. So I don't know if anyone here's lost a limb. I haven't. But my dad almost lost his thumb. And I remember when he was talking about it, they were like, oh, yeah, it was like fine. And the doctor even said if it had just been a little bit more and the whole thing came off, they still probably could have saved it. And that has always like really stuck with me, that idea that we have this knowledge and science around reattaching limbs. But you think about how quick and how easy it is to sever that piece, and then how much labor and nuance and knowledge and time and healing goes into repairing that damage. And that's how I kind of look at my experience and my journey returning to community, returning to language, returning to ways of knowing and being, is it's like stitching muscle. And one of the things that I don't know if I've come to terms with, but I'm still kind of trying to come to terms with, is you may do all this work and it fails and the limb cannot be saved. Either through, it was too long, it was too damaged. And this is something that I and a lot of other Indigenous people are going to and will and have experienced. And it's just something we work through. And there is no knowing what the future holds for it. So you kind of have to just do the work and then pray a lot. And I think also for me, and this is very in keeping with like Cree people, is like just have a sense of humor about the dark stuff. This is also very similar to like my dad's side. He's Newfoundlander Irish, and you have to have a like humor about the dark things, because you can't cry all the time even though you really want to. And I'm sorry if that got too emotional. Let's go on to something a little bit lighter. Here's an adorable children's mobile game I made. This was, again, another project I did in a group. I was the lead artist on this. I didn't do the mouse, but I did the rest of the environment, and I did the main character. And it was just supposed to be this really sweet, lovely puzzle game where you played as an adventure mouse and you solve puzzles in order to get pieces to put together a hot air balloon, and then you were going to go off into a termite castle in the sky. And I wouldn't necessarily label this as an Indigenous game, but you can definitely see my influence in the game as you're playing it, in that you have this sort of like sovereign Indigenous population who is suddenly threatened by this new group who just are like technologically superior, and or not even technologically superior, like technologically different or technologically at odds, and are just happening to damage the ecosphere of this particular community. And so it's like your job as the hero to kind of just go and explore and find out what's going on and seeing if you can like negotiate something. We never got that far because this was just a prototype, but you can play it. I think it's just for PC now because we weren't able to continue support on mobile, but you can definitely download it and play it on the PC. It's really sweet. And it's one of those ones where I was like, is this Indigenous? I'd say no, but also because of my influence on the game, because I was the lead artist, because I did do some of the programming, because it was only a 4-person group and I was pretty vocal. I'm always vocal. So you could make the argument, but this is one of those ones where it's like, I'm not saying it is, but also like I wouldn't begrudge someone making the argument that it has those flavors. Now, what I would begrudge is if then this would not happen with my team, but if I had someone on that team who had decided to take it and slap the label, this is an Indigenous game, and maybe try to put feathers on people and stuff like that, and then use me as a means of saying, well, it's okay, that would not be okay. And sort of, this is not me trying to say like what is and is not Indigenous in games in terms of how each Indigenous creator approaches their work, but it is me kind of like opening up the conversation about like what is and is not at this point in time acceptable. Now, I really do want to make stuff that like feels Indigenous sometimes, because I did grow up on this stuff. Like I did go to powwows, I did go to like drumming circles and learning a lot of this stuff sort of in a way that I didn't realize, I guess, it was Indigenous. And I don't know if that probably doesn't make sense. It's a weird nuance for someone who has been sort of raised in a Western educational system, because of the ask for Indigenous people to perform in a certain way. When you're kind of when you're Indigenous and you're just kind of absorbing this stuff as a child, you don't really think of it as being this separate thing, as being a performance, because you're on the inside. So these things can kind of get, to an Indigenous person, can get kind of like gray, But at the end of the day, yeah, okay, we do like this stuff. Like, powwows have really gorgeous traditional looking pieces. I am a big fan of like orange and blue. Like, that's some of my favorite dancers use that kind of combination. And I would love to do pieces that, you know, feel to, I was suppose, an outside non-Indigenous person like an Indigenous game. That's not what I'm saying in these things. It's not that we don't want to do these things. It's just when you feel like that's all you're allowed to do, or when you feel like you're questioned about doing anything different, you kind of have like one of a few responses. Now, for me, it's either like early on, I sort of just shut down. I was like, fine, I won't do anything that looks Indigenous. It was sort of like, you know, that high school teenager attitude of like, if you won't let me do what I want to do, I just won't do it. And, you know, that's still me limiting myself due to somebody else's perception and saying what they think should be valid. And while it's fine to do art in a reactionary way, it shouldn't be the only way you're doing art, and it shouldn't inform your entire practice. You should feel free to do these things as an Indigenous person that you really want to do, that you really want to talk about. So yeah, this is a character design I came up with ages ago, and actually the pattern on her poncho is from Christy Belcourt, and I just want to make these things, of course. But also, I kind of need to come to terms with and be okay and feel strong enough to say that first thing that I said, which was like, it's Indigenous because I'm Indigenous, and I do not have to perform my indigeneity to satisfy, you know, your pre-developed understanding of what Indigenous is. So now, yeah, I'm making games that have Indigenous people in it. That actually deal with Indigenous issues inside Indigenous communities, that don't necessarily speak to people outside of those communities. But this is something I brought up in an article I did a little while ago. That's okay. We have this idea in the West that you have to like localize to the extreme. Like, you have to make sure that your stuff is as palatable to as many people as possible. And if you're not, you're kind of going against the grain. But then I'm like, I grew up on bootleg anime and manga. I grew up on stuff that was coming from countries that didn't even know I existed and never decided to make it for me. This stuff was not made for me. It was not made for my population. It was not even made for my country. This was made for them. And you know what? We loved it anyways. It spoke to us because things will speak to people across nations, across countries, across political lines. Art is art because it speaks, not because it's geared to a particular group of people. People will consume things they think are cool. People will watch and read things that they just think is going to be neat. That's okay. I actually think that's how we should look at games. It's neat. So now I'm working on, you know, this game called Hill Agency, and it's going to be set in this world, and it's going to be 3D, and I'm really excited. And, you know, this is an entirely Indigenous world with a majority Indigenous team creating it. And actually, one of the really cool things, and I'm really excited about this, is my team is majority Indigenous, but also of those Indigenous people on the team, majority Cree and Métis. So we are kind of speaking from within our own collective nation, even though we each come from different communities. And I'm really excited about that, because that just adds so much nuance to what we're doing. And I really think people are going to love this. So one last thing before I go. I just want to show you something I'm working on, if it plays. Yeah. So this is a demo for a piece that's going to be shown at Imaginative in October called A Night Call. Ignore the texture streaming pool part. And so I just wanted to do this really gentle night sky while kind of listening to a phone call that's just kind of got a touch of Indigenous futurisms to it. And part of all these things that I do is my my active survivance. Like, even when I'm not making quote unquote indigenous games, I'm still enacting survivance. So that's my talk. Thanks. And if you got any questions, you can totally reach out to me on Twitter. Hey, bye.
Wow. That,
Excellent stuff.
I don't know how you transition out of a powerful presentation like that.
I'm sorry, did I really slow?
No.
That was so amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. So we're gonna take a quick 1-minute break. We'll be back with I think we got 2 more presenters tonight. Does that sound right?
Yeah,
That
Jeremy
sounds right.
and then myself, my beautiful, cute self.
Oh boy, oh boy. Don't go away.
High quality content. Straight into your eyeballs.
Alright, well now we have Jeremy Penner. And I don't know what he's doing. I never know what he's doing, but he's here to explain it, thankfully. I don't have to. So I'll hand it over to you, Jeremy.
Cool. Hi, everybody. So today I want to talk about ANSI art. So this screenshot that I have open right here. This is a game from the 80s, an MS-DOS game, PC game called Kingdom of Kroz. Very, very early shareware game. You notice all the graphics is kind of made up of weird letters and weird symbols. This was actually, there were a number of games from that era that kind of looked like this. You had Kroz. I remember a game that was called ANSI Dude, The Amazing Adventures of ANSI Dude, which I just really like that name. And of course, there is kind of what I'm going to focus a little bit more on, which is a game called, I don't know how to, I think the canonical way to pronounce it is Zut. It is often referred to as ZZT, and as a Canadian, it's really obnoxious to say ZZT.
Yes.
So I don't know what I'm going to do. But yeah, again, ANSI art game. And what was really special about ZZT was that it has this thing called the board editor. So it was a game that used this kind of weird text-based graphics and was kind of real time, but it also allowed you to make your own levels and games. So I'm just have this website open here, the Museum of ZZT. And you can just like, here's a bunch of random weird stuff that people have made, and people are still making stuff with it. Like, here's the latest thing, people are live streaming games. There's this thriving community of ZZT stuff. So yeah, and just like here, I've got a screenshot of like, here's the board editor. It had a kind of its own little simple programming language. There you can get really into the weeds with like, people hacked it so that you could do more kinds of stuff. But like this is basically the editor. So I'm not actually going to show you any ZZT, but I was kind of heavily inspired by this. So I'm going to tell you a story, I guess, about this project, which is called Marmots, which is started in 2009, which was a long time ago. But I had recently started the game making community, Glorious Trainwrecks, and I was frustrated with. There were lots of really cool tools for making games, and like that were very kind of accessible or interesting, but there weren't a lot of tools for making games with other people over the internet, which is kind of what I really wanted to do. We've kind of settled on, everyone kind of goes off, kind of game jam thing, goes off and makes their own thing, and then comes together at the end and everyone plays their own thing, and that's a fun experience. But I kind of wanted to get back to when I was a kid, just hanging out on the computer with my friend, and we would kind of bounce ideas off each other in real time and just like put weird little games together. So in 2009, I started on this project, which was called Marmots. And this is kind of my first post about it, where it's like, so basically I tried to build a system for real-time game development collaboration, and realized that was a hugely and stupidly ambitious project to take on my own. So I'm like, how can I simplify this? And I kind of thought back to this ZZT world where it's like, okay, the graphics are text-based. You don't really have to draw anything. And I also kind of thought back to bulletin board systems, which was, kind of pre-internet. You would dial up and everything would kind of be text-based. And they had these really, would kind of do this really intricate art. You could do really interesting stuff with it. And so I was kind of like, well, what if you took something like ZZT but made it online? And so that was kind of the genesis of Marmots. So again, this is like May 2009. Marmots is short for the Marvelous Multiplayer Online Telnet Server. So the idea was like, this was going to be basically using the same technology as like a bulletin board system that you could call up, or once it's on the internet, you can connect to these things via Telnet. But it would be literally the same, and all the logic would happen on the server. So you would just connect and you would just send keystrokes, and the server would understand, okay, this is what you meant to do, and kind of sync everybody's screen. And I kind of started, I had this series of visions, which was like, here's the step-by-step how I'm going to get this, make this happen in kind of bite-sized chunks. So it's like, first I need to write a Telnet server, and like at this point I had gotten that far. Then it's like, okay, well, I want to make it so that you can connect to this telnet server and then people can type over top of each other, and kind of make that multiplayer. And no saving, no anything, just make that work. And I kind of got that going. And I actually, I think, got posted to like indiegames.com at some point, and like got completely overrun with spam and racism and garbage. So I'm like, okay, next thing I need to do, I need to shut that down and like have a login, so I can have, you know, the barest minimum kind of moderation tools. So yeah, so now you can log in. You can kind of see, you know, a list of art that, you know, you can kind of save your work and work on something with someone or work on something else on your own. Adding layers, splitting things into groups. And this is, I basically worked for 2 years on this project, fairly, you know, off and on, till about 2011, and I got this far. You know, we split into, you have these projects and you can make different artworks. And then in 2011, I basically, you know, had a bunch of stuff happen in my life and kind of put the project aside. And that's not strictly true. So kind of version 5, we can kind of skip. That was not a good idea. But Vision 6 was basically turning into a game making thing. And I actually put a lot of work towards that. And if you're a long-time Dirty Rectangles Ottawa person who's been coming, you may remember I actually demoed kind of a prototype of the scripting editor in 2011, and you probably don't remember this. But I put a lot of effort into it, but I couldn't quite, it never gelled. I never quite got it. And so, yeah, 2011, I kind of set the project down, and nothing. 9 years. 9 years went by, and then, yeah, this past, I don't know, May, I decided to kind of start digging into the source code again and see what I could do. See kind of how close it got, could I, you know, de-scope it, you know, with this, you know, 9 years of professional development experience under my belt, you know, could I take it to where I wanted it to go? So yeah, this is Marmots. It is at marmots.glorioustrainwrecks.com. I'm just going to drop that in the chat right now. You should be able to connect just from your browser. Hit connect. Right now, I'm set up a special server, so you can just log in as whatever your username, and you don't have to type a password. It's just going to accept you, just for Dirty Rectangles, because I want people. Holy shit! Oh, that's me. I'm already logged in. Because I want people to check this out. Remember the code of conduct, people. It's important. So yeah, so here's the list of projects. I just have the Dirty Rectangles project. There is a demo game. And then kind of, I can either play the demo game by starting a new game, and then I can kind of wander around my little happy face here. And you know, just kind of check out this castle or whatever. And castle guy says, go away. Okay. Well, just give me 1 second here. There we go. So on this other client, I'm actually already logged in. So you see, if I go to demo game, oh shit, everyone's starting their own new game. You can actually join other people's games by clicking on it. So now this is a 2-player game. So maybe do that. But I also can just go to the edit board option. And now the game is editable. And so I can just like start drawing stuff. Hello, rectangles. And then like in my browser window, Hello Rectangles just shows up. Everything is live all the time. which is interesting. It's fun. So yeah, and so like I could maybe like go through here. If so, you hit tab to bring up the menu here. You can kind of select your colors. I'm gonna say like a yellow on green, and then like maybe draw a little smiley face guy. So that's kind of the one here. So I'll draw a little smiley face on the beach. There's different layers. The top layer is always kind of the layer that has the gameplay on it, and I can just kind of show kind of what's background and what's foreground. So anything that's visible right now is an obstacle, but you can draw kind of whatever you want in the background. Kind of bring that up. There's a full chat system. So if someone else wanted to join the editor, I could say hi, rectangles. And then, if someone else was editing alongside me and they wanted to say something or, discuss ideas or whatever, they could type in the chat. And then if you have unread messages, this kind of bar at the bottom here would turn kind of bright teal to let you know. And then I'm going to turn this. So I'm going to edit the script for this guy. So this is the script editor, which is also multiplayer and live. So I can, if I just create a new line here, this just starts as a blank line, and then kind of on the right here are all the different things that I can put here. So I could say, let's show a dialogue, for example. And then I could say, draw some text that says, I am the man on the beach. And then maybe provide an option to say, I don't know, give me $1. If he gives you $1, then I'll set a flag, has $1. And it's showing here kind of, this is like an IntelliSense type thing. And I can create a new flag called has $1 and initially set it to false. So now I can set it to true. And then I don't know. That's fine. And then so I can go over here and like edit the gatekeeper guy and say, okay, well, if I have $1, then broadcast thank you for the $1, and then clear the flag, set it to false. Otherwise, say go away. So I can actually have cut and paste, which is kind of nice, with Control X, Control C. So yeah, now they're oh, okay. Some people are actually showing up in the editor and in the chat, which is cool. Eric says hello. What's up, Eric? So yeah, drawing smiley faces. It's good stuff. So yeah, I can like maybe bring my browser game back. So like I said, lots of people hanging out in the game. I don't even know which guy is me anymore. Oh crap. What is happening? Oh my god. I have absolutely never had this many people connected to the server before. Oh, I'm down at the bottom. Of course I am. All right, so I mean, people are seeing for themselves, I'm sure, what the dialogue looks like, but like, I am the man on the beach. Give me $1. And now he will take the $1 from me. Thank you for the $1. Now, if I go again, he'll say go away. So, the other thing that's maybe fun to do is the player is also just kind of an object. and the player can have their own. You can have a script for that object, or it's called a bot in Marmots. So it's just this checkbox. Is it a player? Then that's where players spawn. If there's more than one, it just picks one at random, because why not? But yeah, I can, if you bump into someone else, I'm going to, say smooch. So go kiss. Yes. Feel the love. Oh, I'm missing an asterisk. Oh, no, there it is. People started kissing immediately before I even finished typing. Oh, no. Oh, no. So, yeah, this is live on the internet. Once I'm going to put it back, so after tonight, to kind of require a Glorious Trainwrecks login. So, I mean, if you want to mess with this, you should check out glorioustrainwrecks.com because it's a pretty cool, friendly game development community, which is full of really cool people and doing really interesting work. But yeah, I don't know that I kind of got everything I wanted to get to, and if there's questions, I'm very happy to take them.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you, Jeremy.
So amazing, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Just throughout the call for questions in the chat, we'll just enjoy all the smooches here for another second or two.
It's gonna go a long time. There is no cutoff. It will just queue forever.
Amazing.
Sure.
We got a question here from Alan. Can we get a link to the list of visions?
Yes, I will drop that in the chat after we're done.
Beautiful. System Chalk says questions must be submitted inside the game. I mean,
that's also fair. I'm going to leave this on, so if people have questions after I'm done, I'll be in the chat in the editor, and that's
so how do you access the chat?
So if you go to I'll go back. Oh, there's also an in-game chat, which I forgot about, and there's no actual way to. I don't have a notification for it yet. But if you go to demo game and edit board, there's a chat there which is persistent. So even after everyone's left,
I see.
that's kind of still there. But when everyone leaves the game, that game disappears and that chat disappears. It'll probably also hang out in the game. Oh look, someone made a 1x1 sprite. So that's another thing that actually exists in Marmots, which I haven't hooked up to the game making part of it yet. But there's this concept of a sprite, which can be any particular size, but also has frames of animation instead of layers. So I can make frame 2 is a 2, and frame 3 is a 3, and then I can just click animate here, and it's just going to show. It's going to cycle through them, and I definitely want to incorporate that into the game editing stuff. I just haven't done that yet. Once I bring back the full Marmots, the Glorious Trainwrecks community and some former ZZ peers and just people around have done some really incredible ANSI artwork with this tool already. Some really phenomenal animations and just really cool stuff. So I would also urge you. There's a link here to the ANSI gallery, which doesn't have any animation type stuff, but find a good one. I don't know. It's just kind of HTML dumps of art that people have made. You kind of have the option to at any point dump your art to the gallery, which was kind of my fake export feature. Here's a creepy Mickey Mouse for everybody. Here you
Oh
go.
my god, I love him. Oh my god.
Oh.
Here's a toad friend. Someone complaining that Telnet is slow and awkward to work with, which is, true. It's kind of like a CGA gumshoe game kind of idea.
Sweet
So
lighting.
lots of really cool stuff has been done by the community already. So yeah, I'm interested to see if there's any kind of uptake on people making little games and stuff with it. I think I'd be really excited to see what people do.
Reminds me of the guy from Gunpoint.
Yeah. I think I drew that guy.
CGA. That's great.
Yeah, the list goes on for a while.
That's amazing.
But yeah, marmots.
Excellent.
Jeremy, you continue to be the Dirty Rectangles wizard. Thank you for showing up and working your magic continually. This is so cool. Where can people find you again and find this again real quick?
So yeah, this is at marmots is at marmots.glorioustrainwrecks.com. I look at Twitter, but I don't tweet at SpindlyQ. I'm more active on Mastodon if people are in the Fediverse. SpindlyQ at mastodon.social. Or just hit me up and Glorious Trainwrecks has a private messaging system if people want to talk, or I'm a findable guy. I think just Google SpindlyQ and I'm everywhere.
We gotta get that Dirty Rectangles Mastodon presence up.
Heck yeah.
Jeremy, thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
Let's get some tons and tons and tons of Doritos in the chat for Jeremy here. We're going to take a quick 1-minute break, and we'll be back with the last presenter of the night. Don't go anywhere. Woo!
It'll be me. this is going to sound with my mic going and stuff. But we'll see how it goes. Maybe I can edit some stuff in here. Maybe I can get my camera on here just a sec.
Doing it live.
There I am. So yeah, so there was a reason that this started with 818 as the height of the video. I think somebody noticed that. I don't know how you noticed that or how you would know, but that is exactly what it was set to, because it was set to the precise dimensions of my game I was going to show today. So I'm going to show that now. So we will get rid of these guys. I guess I don't even have to hold down my mic button.
Oh yeah, the quality is listed as 818p
okay.
on Twitch.
Weird. So I'm going to minimize this so we can see my desktop.
Amazing.
Hopefully there's not anything too incriminating on it. So, yeah, anybody who came out to Dirty Rectangles, the last live one we did in March, I think that was the one where I presented this sort of last. Was just sort of, I was presenting a presentation on the inspirations behind my game, but I've been working on this game called Molehill Mountain, which is largely inspired by, I can start a retro arc here. I think this will work. So everyone's probably heard of a game called Dig Dug. A very similar game made by Williams was this game called Mr. Do, which I actually think is very superior to Dig Dug. It's got a lot more sort of interesting mechanics, but you can kind of drop apples on people. I didn't get that guy. There we go, got those guys. And it's just sort of this game where you go around and you collect things, and you can throw this ball every once in a while to kill guys. And there's these pieces of cake you can grab to kind of spawn different things, and there's a lot of stuff going on, but it's all like pre-authored. There's only like 10 levels. There's this first one that's kind of shaped like a D, and then the next level, if I just beat this to go to the next level, you'll see the next one I think is shaped like the number 2. Yeah, so this one is kind of shaped like the number 2 in terms of the path through the maze or whatever, and then the next one after this is 3, and etc, etc. So I was sort of inspired by this to try to make more of like a roguelike that had these same sort of basic mechanics, but introduced a little bit of stats, a little bit of items, a little bit of surprises in terms of what you actually experience inside levels and that kind of thing. And for the look of it, let's see what I can bring up here. Where are my lists? For the look of it, I was sort of inspired by a lot of these old, like, sort of LCD games that you see a lot of in sort of like the late 80s, early 90s, where you had a lot of these sort of LCD screens and this kind of thing. You see this with a lot of like Tamagotchis and that kind of thing as well. Here's a
Although I don't have
video of a Digimon. But just this kind of concept of having like a pixel matrix display sort of over top of like a hand-painted background, I thought was sort of a way to make just like standard low-res pixel art look a little bit more interesting, a little bit more intriguing. So with those things in mind, I've been working on my game. Let me get this running here. So this is just sort of using a Game Boy shader that was made for RetroArch, and then I just kind of reverse engineered that so that I could use it here with this game. Let me see if I can actually get a better presentation for this. I want to do a game capture. There we go. So this will maybe be a little bit bigger now. So sorry, just because of the nature of how this is done, the way this displays is going to look a little bit weird unless you can kind of get the screen that you're viewing it on exactly right to the dimensions that I'm displaying. Otherwise you're going to get a lot of like moire patterns and like weird rescaling issues. But essentially what I have here is I just sort of have a randomly generated level. Where I'm kind of populating it with both the pickups that you're going to have to actually collect, and then also the enemies that are going to spawn. And instead of those apples or the rocks from Dig Dug, I've got these vegetables that you can kind of drop on people. The enemies aren't programmed yet to actually get squashed by those, but you can squash yourself. You can see that there. So all of this right now is procedurally generated, and I have sort of a method for doing this where I'm using a lot of randomness, but there's also sort of a method to the randomness, which is what you typically want to do when you're procedurally generating things. Is you want to have sort of a random quality to it, but then you want to try to interpret that randomness to actually generate something that is within a set of constraints that are going to create something that's enjoyable for your game. So I'm very much still sort of exploring this right now. I don't know exactly where I'm going to end up with this once I'm actually finished the game, but this is just sort of a presentation of like where I'm at so far in my process for generating these levels. So just recently I introduced the concept of spawning these enemies. They don't interact with the player or anything yet, but they're kind of cute, you know, just walking around. They don't have any AI or anything yet either. They're going to. Right now I'm calling them pit squeaks because they're in a pit and they squeak. Also, we've got these sort of special pickups, these little grubs that kind of can see you coming before you eat them up. And they're probably going to have a mechanic to them eventually where if you leave them alone for too long, they can sort of like spawn into like a beetle that will actually be like aggressive towards you and that kind of thing. But anyway, to my procedural methods. So, like I was showing with Mr. Do, it had these pre-canned levels where that first level is just in the shape of a D for Mr. Do, and then from there it's just in the shape of a 2, in the shape of a 3, in the shape of a 4, etc., etc., up until the final level, which is just in the shape of a big 0 with a line through it, and then it just repeats after that, as you may be used to if you've played a lot of those really old arcade games. They tend to just have a loop that they repeat through. But for my game, I wanted something a little more interesting. I wanted something where you could generate these sort of random patterns, and where there'd be a little bit of messiness to them. You can probably see, because I just implemented my code for spawning the enemies, sometimes they spawn trapped and sort of entombed in the dirt, unfortunately. But I'll fix that in a bit. There's a reason for that happening. But just to sort of explain how this works, there's basically 3 different path generation schemas that I have, and when a level is being generated, it basically just randomly chooses 2 of them, and then it does them. And it can pick the same one twice, it can pick any combination of the 3. But the 3 that it's doing is basically horizontal lines, vertical lines, or loops. Okay? So the way that each of these work, let's say this one here. So this one has chosen a horizontal line and a vertical line. Now, horizontal lines and vertical lines work basically the same way, which is like a horizontal line will start, let me see if I can actually draw on the screen here to kind of better illustrate this. Do I have paint or something up? There we go. Hold on just a sec. Bring this over here. And then do a chroma key on this. Hold on. do a green one. Just bear with me a second here. Yeah, that should work. Okay, there we go. Then with my brushes. Okay, so that works. Okay, so on this screen here, we have. Sorry, it's hard for me to see what I'm doing. So yeah, we have a. When we're dealing with a horizontal line, essentially what it does is it starts somewhere on the left side of the screen here, and then, oops, sorry. It starts somewhere on the left side of the screen here, and then it generally wants to just move over to the right, but it will randomly go up or down, and it has sort of a low random chance of doing that. So say it's flipping or it's rolling like a 6-sided die. On like a 1 it will decide to go up, and like on a 2 it will decide to go down, but on any of the other numbers it'll just keep going over to the left. So generally when we see a horizontal line like this one here, you can see it went straight for a lot of the time that it was drawing, but then at a certain point it decided to go down, and then it started going straight again. So that's the way that those ones work. The vertical lines work basically the same way. You can see this one started going down, and then it decided to go to the right, and then it started going down. So similar to the horizontal lines going up and down, the vertical ones can just go to the right or to the left randomly, but generally they always want to go down. The last style of generation is these loops, where all it does is it basically, that's my redo. Sorry. So generally, for loops, it will choose a central spot that it wants to draw the loop at, and then it will pick a horizontal radius and a vertical radius, and then it will basically just draw the loop around that spot. If it ends up banging up against a side, like either the top or like the side over here, it will just sort of flatten out the loop, but it'll keep drawing it, which sometimes results in something interesting. So here we have a vertical line and a horizontal line. Here we have a loop with a vertical line, 2 horizontal lines. When it chooses these, like I call these being, these formations either like an 11 or a 10, if you get one of these boring ones that has a loop and a vertical line. That's sort of a 10, but that one's okay. Here's 2 loops that kind of got drawn almost on top of each other. Trying to find a 10. They usually happen pretty often, but anyway, these 11s are kind of boring right now. What I want to actually do is I want to come up with something that I'm going to generate, and sorry, I'll get rid of my crappy drawings here. What I want to do is I want to be able to recognize when I get one of these boring ones, and then just kind of like generate something interesting that will be in here, so that instead of these being boring, like it'll actually be an exciting thing to happen, that you've got one of these ones where the paths are not that crazy. What I'm thinking is there'll probably be like a wall or something between these that has like a door that, you know, either like needs a key, or maybe there's like some sort of a pulley or something that has like a weight on it that you have to like raise or lower in order to open the door or something like that. Just something to make these ones a little bit more interesting. But yeah, just to explain some more of what's going on here. Oops. So you probably noticed that the lines are not always perfectly connected, and that's intentional. So that's to make these like sort of more interesting. So sometimes when these generate, it's just lines and they're full and they all connect, like this one very conveniently. But often you see these kind of broken up lines. So what's happening here is that when I first start the generator, I set an identity to the tunnel that is currently being drawn. So really it's just a number. I just start at 0 and then I iterate up. But let's say like the first one is called James, and then the next tunnel is called Derek, and then the next tunnel is called Kezia, and etc., etc. When the level's being generated, at any point, like there's like a random chance between the methods. So like say this one here is clearly a horizontal line and a vertical line. When it switches over from doing the horizontal line to doing the vertical line, it has a pretty high chance of changing the identity to a new identity. And then there's also a very small chance that you can see happened twice here, that during the drawing of one of the tunnels, it can just change the identity at some point in it, just sort of randomly. It's a very small chance, but it can happen. So when the identity gets changed, when we actually dig the tunnels from the tunnel generator, if their identities don't match, we don't connect those tunnels together. So here we can see this one here was, oops, let me get my brush out. This one here was like drawing, and then it got to this point, it changed identity, and then it started drawing again, and then it changed identity again, and then when it drew the loop, it probably still had the identity of this last one over here, and so it wouldn't connect to this one anymore when it bumped into it. So this is just kind of to create a more interesting thing, especially because, as you can see, like the enemies, they don't always dig. Like my player character can just dig whenever he wants to. It kind of like slows him down, but he can basically do it whenever he wants. These enemies, these rats, they can only dig, they can't do it yet, but basically if I'm moving around on the other side of this wall and he passes close to me like that, he'll hear me moving around and he'll get all pissed off and then he'll break through the wall. So he'll go into like a digging state basically where he can like dig for a short period of time and then he'll come after me. So that's sort of the purpose for me wanting to do these identities in addition to it just making the map kind of look more interesting. But it also has a mechanical sort of side to it as well. And there's going to be other enemies that interact with the tunnels in different ways as well. The next step of the procedural generation was just choosing where these sort of groups of like insect eggs that you collect, where they're actually getting placed. So right now, I always place 3 groups of them if I can, I think. And they're in groups of 8. You can hear the sound when you collect them, kind of goes up until you get the 8th one. So they're just being placed in spaces where they can be placed, and they have like a few different shapes that they can take. And all that's being done procedurally as well. The vegetables are also being placed procedurally. They have a preference that they like being placed next to a tunnel, just because that's more interesting mechanically. You can kind of push them out of their spot or dig out under them and then drop them on people. So there's just sort of a preference for them wanting to be near the tunnels if at all possible, or when they're above them they want to be like one space above so that they don't like fall down right away when the level's generated, but instead they fall down when you dig out from under them. So that's how those are being placed. And then right now the enemies are being placed where they're not being placed too close to the player at the start, so you don't like start with this enemy right on top of you. It's just sort of random how many of them get spawned. It can be like 1 or 2 or 3 right now. There'll probably be things that affect that and like affect the kinds of enemies that are generated and that kind of thing as I make this more sophisticated. But right now they have a preference that they like being in places where there's more adjacent tiles of tunnel. So you can see this guy, he generated inside of that, sorry, I've got all my scribblies all over the screen still. When this level first generated, that one guy was sort of like in this cluster here, and then the other guys were just kind of in spots that were far away from me. And that's generally where they try to generate, so that guy there generated in that cluster. Here I was kind of occupying the cluster so they couldn't really spawn in it. Over here they're sort of favoring places that have a lot of dirt. That's just how I'm currently generating these pit squeaks. Depending on the kind of enemy and their behavior, I might spawn guys in different places based on different characteristics. But this is all just part of like a procedural generation strategy where the initial generation of stuff is very random, but then you try to start sort of like algorithmically making sense of what is generated so that the rest of your stuff sort of has a logic to it that is sort of predictable for players, where they can figure out like, oh, you know, if there's a big sort of opening over here, maybe there'll be a treasure there, or maybe there'll be a strong enemy there guarding a treasure, or these kinds of things, right? So you can kind of like allow the procedural generation to come to logical conclusions that you know will be fun from a gameplay point of view, and then just use the randomness to create variance rather than the overall design of your levels. Anyway, so that's the philosophy that I'm currently kind of going with. And that's all I really had to talk about. So yeah, I don't know if anybody has any questions. You guys here?
Awesome. Thank you so
We're all
much,
here.
James.
So good.
Oh, you might not be able to hear us.
I can hear. Oh wait, maybe not.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
You can hear me on here though, right?
Yeah.
We're back.
Yeah.
We're back. Okay.
Yeah, we're back.
They should be able to hear you. I have my desktop audio on. That's you guys.
This is super cool, James. So you've been working on this for a while though, right? Like,
Sort of off and on. I haven't been working on it too heavy. I just started working on it again this last month. More trying to get the actual game up. Right now, I'm just trying to basically get like Dig Dug or Mr. Do, but with procedural levels done. And then the next step from that is to kind of start adding in the other mechanics I want to have, like water that you can drop on people that kind of slides people around and all this other stuff, and throw in more of like the RPG elements that I want to do.
Cool.
Awesome.
Cool. So we're gonna start wrapping things up here. Just as if you have any last questions for James, get them in there now while we wrap things up on our side as well. But yeah, this is gonna do it for our August show and chill. Thanks everybody for coming and hanging out with us.
There is one announcement I forgot to do at the beginning, and that is for Roguelike Celebration 2020. It's a virtual event that simulates a roguelike social space. It's pretty cool. There's a nice pay what you can setup. I'll post the Eventbrite back in. I don't know if M. Laserwalker is still in the chat, but she's one of the core organizers. She does a lot of cool stuff. So yeah, you should definitely check that out. It's October 3rd and 4th.
Cool. Was there any other random announcements that anyone else happened to think of over the course of the night?
And because you're all waiting for it, let me get you, Fee.
Ah, perfect. We'll
let me get
stretch as the cat shows up. So yeah, big thanks to everybody for that presented tonight. This was a fantastic show. We're trying to like figure out the right time and frame and like how many people to make this like the most enjoyable show. This was like 5 presenters. I think that felt pretty good. So big thanks to everybody. There's Yuffie. Hi. Oh, Liam. Aw. Which cat is that again, Liam? Is that Hazel?
Here, it's Yuffie. She's a bit hyper today, as you can see. Look,
Aw.
Yuffie.
Everybody in the chat, go grab your cat. Give him a big hug for us.
All right, Yuffie, you can
Cat
be
night.
free now.
Hazel absolutely hates this. She's not having a good time at all.
If you are watching the stream, you can check out the VOD if you want to watch it twice, or you can tell your friends to go watch the VOD. That'll be up as soon as this is done, basically. Come tomorrow, it'll be up on YouTube. You can check out our YouTube channel. If you search for Dirty Rectangles Online on YouTube, you find our channel. Everything goes up there in about 24 hours. If you want to come on this show, lots of ways you could do it. Find either one of the many organizers of Rectangles if you happen to know us, or swing over to twitter.com/dirtyrectangles or twitter.com/rectangles_TO. And you can reach out to any of the Rectangles organizers directly from there. Eric's pointing at something. Did I miss something?
Yeah, you can also post it up in our presentation request channel on the Discord.
If you're in our Discord, you could post it up there. If you want to get in our Discord, message us. We'll let you in our Discord. And we'll go from there too. Yeah. Any last parting words from anybody here?
I'm a lot of energy.
Cool. Well, with that, I think we will depart. Thanks everyone for joining us on what is officially our first ever August meetup. Because we've always done barbecues in August.
Yeah, it's always been the month
in
off,
10 years, this is the first time we've gotten together to actually show everybody video games in August. That's pretty cool. So you can say you were a part of that. Dirty Rectangles first. And we'll be back in whatever next month is. September, apparently.
Yeah.
That can't be right.
I know, right? Okay.
Alrighty.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, folks.
Bye-bye.
Yuffie's back.
Hold on, I still have my audio on.
Oh, you're so hyper.
You got the credits there?
Trying to.